Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and welcome to my tutorial on how to install PyCharm on Windows 10. And this is specifically for my classes that I'm teaching at two of the iSchools. And one class is just an introduction to Python programming called Introduction to Application Development. And the other class is sort of a Django class. It's called Web Development Using Web Frameworks. And so we're going to talk about how students in my classes are going to install PyCharm Professional on their machines and how they're going to configure it to work with Anaconda for virtual environments. If you're not part of my class, I don't think you're going to find this real useful. If you're just a YouTuber who's come by to check us out, but you're welcome to look. So let's get started here. So, one of the things I've done in the current semester, I'm recording this in early September 2018, is I've combined the tutorials for my two Python classes so that I don't have so much courseware to maintain. And I think it's going to work pretty well. The life of this tutorial, I'd like to be about a year or so. Okay? So, previously, I used to give students a choice in my Intro to Python course about what version of PyCharm to use. PyCharm is the IDE for Python from JetBrains. But I've decided that it's going to be a lot easier for all of us if we take advantage of the license that's available to university people, and we all get the free professional version to which we're all entitled. So there's an educational version, there's a community version, and those are typically okay for an Intro to Python course, but they don't work for the Django course. So I'm going to get everybody on the same page. So we all need to get one of these free individual licenses for students and faculty members. I already have mine. So how can you get yours? Well, you go to the JetBrains website. JetBrains is the maker of PyCharm. And you go to www.jetbrains.com/student. And this is how you get to the page that will get you a license. And the interesting thing is that you not only get a license to the paid version of PyCharm, but you get a license to a lot of these other products. Okay, and I'm not sure what you would want to use. The only thing I'm using in addition to the PyCharm stuff right now is DataGrip, which is a fairly new product that they have. That is for dealing with relational databases. Okay, and it's still in the early stages, but it's kind of fun. So that's what we're doing here. So what I want you to do, if you haven't already done, is to go apply for your free license, and then you ought to be able to log into the website for your JetBrains account. And it's from there that we're going to do the install. Okay? So how could you do that? Well, when you're ready, when you've gone through the dialogue with the the JetBrains license server and all that stuff, you can go to account.jetbrains.com and you come to the login for your account, which you will have created as you got your license. So today I'm using the account associated with my UWM teaching, and so I'm going to put in the credentials for that. And I'm going to sign in. And sure, I'll save the password. I don't care. So what's of interest here is it says that I have a license. It's valid through September 1st, 2019. That's a year from now. That's great. Okay. At a certain point in the year, you can actually you'll get a link in here to renew. Okay, like when I logged on in here this a couple of days ago, this was already expired, so I clicked the link to renew, and it was a little back and forth, but I got it to renew. Okay, so what do I want to do? Well, up here under the title, JetBrains Product Pack for Students, there's download. So I'm going to click on download, and I could download any of these individual products, but I tell you what I've had a lot of good luck with, and here's where I want to steer you. There is this Toolbox app that is will allow you to install any of these products and to uninstall them and to update them when the time comes, and it's very convenient. So what I want you to do is to download the Toolbox app. So let's do that now, and we're going to take the free download. And of course, we're going to get the Windows version. I'm going to save it. And I'm going to open the folder. And now I've got the download for the JetBrains Toolbox, among all these other downloads that I have for, these are all things I think that I've installed in my virtual machine since the beginning of the summer. Okay, so let's give JetBrains Toolbox installer a double click. And I want to install, so I'll click on that. And I kind of remember this going pretty fast. It's installing a lot of DLL, so it looks like it's a native Windows app. And now we've got a checkbox that we want to run the app. Okay, that's good. And we want to click on finish. And okay, it's popped up a dialog where I have to accept the license. And I'm going to allow it to send anonymous statistics to JetBrains because I'm a company man. Okay, and it's going to want to know your credentials again for your JetBrains account because we're really not logged into that right now in the current dialog. So again, I'm going to use my credentials for the iSchool at UWM, and I had to check my cheat sheet for my password. And I'm signed in. So I like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close some of the windows that I have here. So I'm going to close the File Explorer. I'm going to close um, the browser. Okay. And we're going to see how that goes. Okay, so geez, all of a sudden I've lost JetBrains. I had it here, but the toolbox doesn't seem to be up. So JetBrains Toolbox is another product that I would like to have an icon for in my taskbar. So let's go go down the alphabetical list. We go to the start, and then we've got JetBrains Toolbox. I think that's a folder. Yeah, the only thing in it is JetBrains Toolbox. Now when I right click and go to more, and then I say I want to pin it to the taskbar. Okay, so this to the extent that I want to run Toolbox, which is not what I typically run when I want to use PyCharm, but I just wanted to make it easy to find. So let's click on Toolbox, and it'll fire it up. And Toolbox is a combination of things. It's an installer. You can also use it as a kind of a high-level interface to all of these kind of IDE products like PyCharm. I typically only use it as an installer. So let's go down and look at all the things we can install. And I want to come down to PyCharm. And you'll see there are 3 versions of PyCharm. There's the community version, there's the edu version, and there's the professional version. And feel free to install all 3 if you want to. You can install all 3 and you can see the difference. For people who are in my Intro to Application Development course, you could probably do your work with PyCharm Community or PyCharm Edu, but I'm going to be using PyCharm Professional when I do all of my tutorials. So I think you're going to want PyCharm Professional. It just has more features, and I think it's probably better tested at any given point in time. For people in my course we're going to work with Django, you don't have an option here, okay? The Django features at this point are still only in the professional version. So you have to buy the paid version if you want to do Django work with PyCharm. And again, these things are free to us as long as we have a university email address. So certainly as long as you're a student, and probably for some time shortly thereafter. So we're just going to click on install. And you can see down here that at the bottom that it's doing the install on PyCharm Professional 2018.2.2. And the numbering for these versions goes by calendar year, and then by version after that. So we've had 2 major versions released in 2018, and we've had 2 minor versions within that version. And there we go. It's doing the install. So while it's doing the install, I'm just going to pause here to make sure that we don't have you waiting any longer than you have to wait. I'll be back soon. Okay, and I just got a little message that came in from the right side that said that it had been installed. So it looks like it's installed. And one of the things you can see here is that the tools that you do install go up here to the top, okay, and you can click on them to run them. Oh, okay. That's not the way I like to start it, but you can. Okay. So let's click off of here. If we click off of here, it disappears. And how do I get it back? Well, I go down to my taskbar and I click on the box for JetBrains Toolbox. And then I see that I can run PyCharm Professional up here, and I could click on that. Or you could do it the way that I like to do it, which is I like to be over here. Let's go find JetBrains Toolbox. And if we expand that folder, we'll see that there is, within the Toolbox folder, we've got Toolbox, but we also have whatever we've installed. We've got PyCharm Professional, and I want to create an icon for that in the taskbar. So I'm going to right click, go to More, and Pin to Taskbar. Now that's how I'd like to start it. Okay, so certainly it's a matter of preference, and there you go. All right. Now we're going to work with PyCharm and Anaconda. So if you haven't done the tutorial on how to install Anaconda, this is a place that you're going to want to pause and go do that tutorial and get Anaconda installed, because we're going to associate an Anaconda virtual environment with every one of our PyCharm projects. And of course, if you don't have Anaconda installed, and if you haven't created the virtual environments that we did in that tutorial, well, you're going to be stuck. So pause this and go do that. And if you've already done it, well, good for you. So let's fire up PyCharm. And this, well, this looks okay. So we don't want to import any settings, so I'm just going to say okay, because this is a new installation. And will I send usage statistics to our friends at JetBrains? Sure I will. Company man that I am. And there are two themes you can choose from. Darkula, which a lot of my students kind of like. It's kind of a dark theme, but I find it a little bit hard to read. Or the original IntelliJ, which is a brighter, the conventional theme, and I always go with the IntelliJ theme. Well, you're going to pick the one that works for you. Next, we get to pick featured plugins, and in the two classes that we're doing this for right now, we're not using any of these plugins. Although I just want to pause this, because I'm going to go look up bash support, because we may want to do this on Windows. So hang on. I shall return. I'm back. I talked myself out of it. Okay, you can certainly look up what it's for, but I don't think it's going to help us here in the Windows environment right now. So here we go, and now we're going to say start using PyCharm. So we've taken the options, and now we're going to start using PyCharm, and it's going to come up here. And on my machine, it starts a little bit slower. It starts significantly slower here in on the Windows platform than it does in the Mac OS operating system. But I think that's just really the result of my Windows being a virtual machine. So here we are, we're at a dialog where we can create a new project. We can open an existing project. Or we can begin to use version control, which we might do with Git. Right now we're going to want to create a new project. So let's do that. But before we do that, let's go down to the taskbar and let's open up Anaconda Navigator and remind ourselves of the virtual environments that we created in Anaconda Navigator. Okay? So we're going to fire up Anaconda Navigator over top of this beginning dialog to PyCharm. And anytime now. Again, I think that if you're not running a virtual machine, things will run a little bit faster. Oh, and I'm seeing that the dialog for PyCharm that we're in is going to want to stay over top. So I'm just going to close that for now. And let's just go refresh our memory of the virtual environments that we created in the last tutorial with Anaconda. So the environments we have one that we created for the intro to application development course. It's called plain old Python development. In fact, if we find a way to, I guess if we click on it, we can see its full name. It's called plain old Python development. Okay. And then we've got one called Django 2 development. So depending on what we're doing, we're going to pick one of those two and associate them with the project that we create in PyCharm. So the question is, where are these things? Okay. So let's just go find these because we're going to have to we are going to have to find these when we associate them with our PyCharm project. Okay? So let's close Anaconda Navigator and let's go searching in the file system. So I'm going to open up a file explorer. And if you have installed this and said it's for all users, it should be in a pretty easy place to find. It should not be under your username. So if we just go to the local disk and program files, open up that. We ought to be able to find the files that we're looking for. And let me take a short pause here so that you don't see me searching for it. Okay, I found them. They weren't where I was actually expecting them to be. All right, so where are they? Well, let's just go to local disk. And they are under our user because we created them under our user. So we're going to click on users. Kevin Trainer, that's me. You'll be clicking on you. And we're looking for a directory called app data. Well, we don't see it. And that's because it's a hidden directory. So we're going to have to go up to the menu and click on view. And all the way to the right and click on options. And down the bottom we say change folder and search options. And within the folder options, the middle tab is view. And down here in about the middle of our options, at least the first group of them, we have hidden files and folders. the radio button that's currently chosen says don't show hidden files. We want to click to show hidden files and folders. And then we want to say apply. And we want to say OK. And guess what? App data is visible now. So we're just going to leave that visible all the time because we're going to want to get to it from time to time. So let's open up app data. And within that, let's open up local. And within that, we have Conda. Now, Conda is the kind of nickname for Anaconda. So we're going to open up Conda. And there's a Conda within Conda. So we open up that. And now we see two things. We see envs and packages. So let's open up envs. And there are the environments that we created back in the other tutorial when we were working with Anaconda. Okay, so they're directories. So if we open up one, let's open up plain old Python. It is a proper group of packages and installations for what we're looking for. Okay, so that's good. So let's go back. Now, we just remember where these are. They're on our local disk under users, our username, app data, local, Conda, Conda within Conda, and then envs. So this envs is a typical abbreviation for environments. Okay, and we've got the two that we created. So that's where we're going to go look for those when we need them. All right, so let's fire up PyCharm. And of course, for my intro to application development students, we're going to be creating plain old Python development projects. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose plain old Python development. So let's create a new project, okay? And there are two things that you need to match up here. One is the project type. The project type is going to control what PyCharm is going to populate your project with. Your project is going to be a directory. It's going to be inside of C users, URID, PyCharm projects. And then the name of the project, this is, I think, a little bit weak in terms of the user interface. The name of the project is going to be here at the end of this character string. So instead of untitled, which is a very unsuitable name, I'm going to call this my underscore first Python project. Okay. Now, do you have to put underscores between the names? Well, no. Particularly in Windows, the operating system is fairly tolerant of spaces in file names. It's just, I think, a good, healthy practice. This is the way that we form a lot of names within Python, so I kind of think this is a good practice, although some people might think it's kind of stodgy. Okay, so so this is the kind of project we want. It's going to be called My First Python Project, and it's pure Python. Okay, so this is going to populate our directory called My First Python Project with the files for a regular Python project. So now the question is, how do we get the right environment? Okay, now what Python projects are the most concerned about is whether you get the right copy of the interpreter. So the place where we set the environment is right here under this. There's a little triangle here to the left of project interpreter. And we open it, and we can say this. We can say, okay, we want a new environment using what? Let's select Conda. Okay, that sounds good. Oh, do we want a new one or an existing one? Oh, I'm sorry, we want an existing one. I take that back. And why? Because we already created it. So now let's just go find it. Okay, we can look at the drop down. I don't see any that we want. Okay, so let's go here. And okay, now we come to a typical dialog where we pick an existing environment. So over on the left side, what kind of environment is it? It's a Conda environment. Okay, can we just pick one from a list? No, we don't have it. Okay, do we want to make it available to all projects when we find it? Sure, why not? So over here, there's a button for ... Let's go searching for it. Okay, and we remember where we put it. Well, it's within C. It's within users. It's within my name, Kevin Trainer. Okay. Something that seems really appealing is this. I guess this is a shortcut. This is a pointer to another directory that's not really under here, application data. Is that the same as the app data that we're looking for? Turns out it's not. So it turns out that even though we made the hidden directory app data visible in the file explorer, it's not visible here. So can we make it? Yeah, we can. So let's go up to the parent directory, Kevin Trainer, and right click. And right down at the bottom, show hidden files and directories. And let's look back, and now we can see app data. Okay, so not only do you have to turn on that show hidden files and directories in the operating system level, but you have to turn it on within the tool level with PyCharm. So we're going to open up app data, and if you remember, we went to local, and then within that we went to Conda, and within that we went to Conda again. That's what this is. And within that we went to envs. Okay. And then within that, well, we've got two possibilities. We're going to be, when we're doing plain old Python development, we're going to pick plain old Python development. Okay. And are we done? Could we just simply highlight that? Well, look at the bottom. You can't click on OK. And that's because what are we searching for? Are we searching for an environment, or are we searching for an interpreter? Well, if you look at the top here, it says select Python interpreter. So we're going to have to point it to the Python interpreter that's in plain old in the environment plain old Python development. Okay. Well, it turns out if we just go down to the bottom, there is a shortcut that points to the right version of Python within this environment. Now, could we go down and could we look at the code and actually find our way to Python blah 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 blah, 3.6.6? Yeah, we could, but it's probably a better practice to just pick python.exe, and that little question mark over the icon says that this is really just a pointer. This is a shortcut to the proper file that is in these directories somewhere. And now if you look at the bottom, it says OK. So again, we went to app data and then to local, conda within that, enms, we picked the environment that we wanted, plain old Python development. And then within that, we just we pick the placeholder, the thing that's going to point us to the proper Python interpreter, and that's just this little shortcut Python exe. Now let's say OK. If you look up here, we actually have the path all the way to the shortcut to the interpreter. So now we can say OK. All right. And now we can say, now something that I have to check on a lot is before I say to create my project, I want to look up here and make sure that I haven't left the word untitled there. I would rather have a separate box for this in which I pick the name of my project or the directory for my project. Having to tag it onto the end of this path expression seems kind of crude, but this is what the developers preferred, so that's what we get. So before you click on create, make sure you have a proper name for your project, my first Python project, and we're going to click on create. Okay, so we're going to allow access in Windows Defender. Welcome to PyCharm. This is the version. And we've got my first Python project. All right, so let's do this. If we want to create our kind of first Python program, we're just going to do a hello world kind of program, the classic one-line program. So let's right click on the name of the project, say we want a new Python file, and let's call this, I guess we could call it hello world. So the way we name these programs is lowercase underscores for spaces. So now we're going to click on OK. All right. And in my introduction to application development course, we typically put the name of the file up top. We eventually stopped doing that. So we say file hello world.py, and of course this is a comment. So how do we take text and tell the the interpreter that we don't really mean it to be proper Python code but a comment? Well, we can toggle a comment on by in Windows we use control slash. On the Mac we use command slash. So we have that, and the other practice that we have is we create a comment. Let me do control slash. You can do that before the comment, and we're just going to describe the intention of the program. We're going to call this the classic hello world introductory program. There's a whole tradition of doing these. Okay, and typically after the comments we want 2 blank lines. That's the preferred style. And now it turns out that if we just put a Python command out in the clear here, not in any kind of a function or anything like that, it'll just get executed. So the popular one is just say that we want to print, and we need parentheses to put the arguments. What do we want to print? And we put a character string in there, and in the textbook that we're using in Intro to Application Development, character strings in the textbook are always in quotes, in double quotes. So we could say, hello world, exclamation point. Okay. Now, it turns out that there are just as many Python programmers who don't use double quotes. They prefer to use apostrophes. So, and that's the style in the textbook that we're using when we're learning Django. So, I've already been won over to that style. So, I'm going to use apostrophes. So, I'm going to say apostrophes, hello world, exclamation. All right. And I'm going to give myself a blank line, and that looks good. And has this been saved? Yeah, I think it's been saved. But if you want to be absolutely sure, you could use, in Windows, you could do a Control S. Okay. The way the IDE works, the way PyCharm works is typically when you change the code in the window, it saves it to the file. It seems kind of magical to me. Okay, so how do we run this? Well, we run this by looking for a run button. Okay. And I kind of see something that looks like a run button up here, but it doesn't seem to be activated. And or I could go up to the run menu and click on that. And I don't see a run there either. And let me do a right click. And I do see run hello world. So let's run hello world. And look what's happening. We've popped up a console, and we see the output from hello world.py, which has been run, and it says hello world. So that's pretty good. We have it installed. We have that working. What other things might we want to discover? Well, let's do that. Let's close this console. It has a little X on it, so we can close it. And that's a console in the sense of an operating system console. What if we wanted just the interpreter? What if we wanted just the Python interpreter that's associated with the project? Well, we could come down here to the left and click on Python console. And here we get the familiar prompt. So here we could simply type in code, print hi mom. I always like to do that. And go out to the end and press a return, and there's our hi mom. So this is this line by line interpreter that's very popular in the textbooks that I use. It's not typically the way that I program. I may try an expression here or there, but if you want to get a Python console, that's how you get it. And if you want to close it, you can just click on the X. Okay. So terminal. Okay. Here we are. We come into terminal. Okay. And we've got my first Python projects. What this does is it puts you into a command line session without you having to go out to it. And I have to say that on Windows, going to terminal here is the way that Anaconda installs on Windows, it makes going to this little terminal feature pretty unsatisfying, because if we say conda env list, I want to list the virtual environments that Conda has. If we hit return, it says Conda is not recognized as an internal external command, and that's because in the Windows installation, if you want to work at the command line, the way to do it is to not use the terminal inside of PyCharm. There's a way to fix that. You can certainly search for that on the internet, but it's kind of convoluted, and certainly something that looks like it's probably not going to work exactly the same way from version to version. So let's close this, and let's go and say, well, what would I do if I wanted to work at the command line with this? Well, I would just minimize PyCharm, and we've saved from our prior tutorial the Anaconda prompt icons. I'm going to open up that. Okay, and in there, if I say conda env list, well, that works just fine. It's a little slow on my virtual machine, but it does work. Okay, so we've got plain old Python development and Django 2, and of course base. And you see from the parens we're already using base, so that looks good. So we can say conda activate plain old Python development, and there it is in the parens. We know that we're using the proper environment, which in this case means that we're using the Python interpreter that we want. So what's in that environment? What Python packages are in there? Well, we can just say conda list. Okay, and the Python version is 3.6.6, and we have a lot of infrastructure stuff, but that's all we really care about. So could we run our hello world from here? Well, no, we couldn't, because we're not in the directory where that program is. That program is in the directory that forms the project. So how would we find that? Well, luckily, that directory is a subdirectory of this user directory for my name. So I'm just going to type dir for directory, and we can see that we have PyCharm projects is one of the sub directories. So how do we get to that? Well, we change directory cd space PyCharm projects, and it turns out that it's pretty tolerant of not having the proper capitalization. So we hit return. Okay, so now we're you can see that we're in the PyCharm projects directory. So what PyCharm projects do we have? Let's do a dir. Okay, and the only one we really have is my first Python project. So let's change the directory to that. cd my first Python project. Okay, and let's see what files are inside of this. Let's do a dir, and we have we have some directories. This .idea directory is contains a lot of the metadata about the PyCharm project. But apart from that, we just have our hello world.py. So how do we execute that? Well, we just say Python. That's how we invoke the Python interpreter when we have one in our environment. And then we just give it the name of the project, hello world.py, and return. And then it just runs. So in the Windows environment, when we want to work at the command line with Anaconda, we're really going to do best to not do that within the terminal feature of PyCharm. I wish we could. There is a way to configure it. I've made it work, but it looks pretty fragile. And I think this is the recommended command line approach. It's the one I'm recommending here in September of 2018. Okay, so PyCharm, let's exit out of this. Exit, away that goes. And let's go back to PyCharm, which is already in progress. So we created one project, and but when we created it, we had to go hunting for the virtual environment that we wanted to associate with it. Now, how can you find the virtual environment that's associated with your project? Well, you can say File up from the menu and go to Settings. Okay, and then we can pick somewhere here we have the interpreter. Oh, project interpreter. And here we are. Okay. So here is our project interpreter. Oddly enough, we see a lot of the kind of ancillary packages, but not the Python 3.6 package. And maybe we need to go over here and click on some of these icons at the side. Well, that does the same thing. Let's go to this. Why in the world we don't see the actual Python package here is beyond me. But you can see it knows it's found Python 3.6. Okay. So there we are. Again, use Conda Package Manager. Again, we're not seeing it in kind of either version of this. So it used to show up. I'm a little upset that I'm not seeing it. Okay, so that's it for this. Now, could we tell it that we want to use the same one every time? Yeah, we could. Okay. Now, right now, let's just say we want to create a new project. File, new project, pure Python. Let's call this next Python project. Okay, and then let's go down and look at what interpreter we're getting. Okay, well, you know what? Because we said we would share it with other projects, it's just gone to the last one that we used. And if we've used a couple of things, use an existing interpreter. And again, we want to pick the Python interpreter that's in one of our fancy virtual environments. So we could click down here and we could do this. So this is Python 3.6 that's in the Python distribution without any virtual environment. This is appealing, but once we begin to use a package or two, this won't do the job for us. So I like the way that this is. Okay, so again, if we pick this and we create it, we're going to have, let's just open it in the current window. Okay. So we open it in the current window, and then we can do, we can do the same thing again. Now, if you're having a hard time finding the environment, and you want to make if you want to make the environment sticky, you can actually make it even stickier than we just saw by doing this. File, settings for new projects, and again, project interpreter. And you can go here and you can actually say, this is the interpreter that I want for every new project. Now, I don't typically do that. I do well just with the stickiness that we have, but you're certainly entitled to go do that. So that's it for my folks who are in introduction application development. This is how to install PyCharm, and this is how to get it working. You know what? I just clicked here. Hang on. I clicked up here on the X, typical Windows closing, and it said, are sure you want to exit PyCharm. This is what a lot of these integrated development environments will do when it takes them a while to load. Okay, if it takes them a while to load up, they're afraid you're going to accidentally close it, and then you're going to be disappointed. So they have this kind of dialogue that says, do you really want to exit? These drive me crazy. Okay, it doesn't take that long to load on mine. So I typically say, don't ask me again, and say exit. So the next time I go to exit, if I say I want to close PyCharm, it will close it. Typically, when you open it again, it's going to open the last project anyway. Let's see it do that. So it does take a little while here. So I can see why. I can see why people would want it to maybe warn them. But I generally don't like products that ask me if I want to do what I just asked it to do. So if I close a tip of the day, and I kind of like these tip of the day things, okay, but you can actually turn them off too. But I'm not going to turn that off yet. But we came back to the project that we were on. And again, if we click it now, we're just going to go right on out. Okay, so that's it for my intro to application development, folks. My folks who are in web development using application frameworks, the Django project, well, stay with us here. I'm going to pause. I'll be right back, and I'll show you how to create a Django project with PyCharm. Be back in a minute. Okay, we're back. Now this is the part more specifically for the people who are gonna want to work with Django. So there are several places in my course where you'll see ways to use command line tools to create new Django projects. And you can certainly do that, and you can subsequently open them with Django, and with a little fiddling, you can get them to behave the right way. I tend to like to do everything with PyCharm, so I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's fire up PyCharm. Okay. And let's say we want a new Django project. So I'll admit, on my virtual machine, it does take a while. Here it goes. Okay. Tip of the day. I think I've had enough of the tip of the day, so I'm going to stop it for now. Okay. So, what if I want to close the project that's in the current window? Well, I can say File Close Project. Okay, and now I'm going to come back here, and I can open either of these first two projects that I had, which are both plain old Python development projects. But what I really want to do is I want to create a new project. Okay, and again, first of all, you have to create the right project type so that you get the right files put into the directory. So let's click on, it's not pure Python, it's Django. Okay. The second thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you have a proper name for your project. Again, I don't really think this is the greatest user interface to be working on the end of this path expression, but I'm going to call this first Django project. Okay, see how that goes. And now I'm going to am I ready to create? No, I'm not, because I've got to set up a couple things. One, in this project interpreter, I want to make sure that I'm pointed to the right virtual environment. And in the more settings, I'm going to make sure that it knows that I've got a Django project. This more settings is the area if you're, let's say that you created your Django project at the command line. You can certainly open your Django project simply by saying that you want to open the directory that it's in. But then you're going to have to go and you're going to have to configure the project, just like we're doing now. And again, you're going to have to set the environment and the more settings. Let's set the environment first. Okay, so it says here we want to use an existing interpreter, and it's pointing to plain old Python development. Well, that's great, but that's not what we have. So let's take the drop down. Do we have anything else we can use? No. That Django 2 development one is out there, but we haven't used it before, so it's not in the drop down. So where do we want to go? Well, we want to go to this ... So we click on ... Let's click on it again. And this is the same dialog that we saw before. So you do have to remember to come over here on the left and say, oh, it's a Anaconda environment. Okay. Do we want to make this available to all projects? I'll say this. And in working with Django, okay, you will work with different Django projects that have really different package requirements, including totally different versions of Django. So the idea that you're going to have just one virtual environment for all your Django projects is probably not realistic. Okay. On the other hand, could you have a couple that share the same environment? Yeah, you probably could. All right. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to click the box to say make available to all projects, with the caveat that that's only going to gain me so much. And now I'm going to go look for the interpreter again. So I'm going to click on the dot dot dot, and it's in the same place it was the last time we looked for it. So under C, we want to go to users, and we want to find our username. And look again, since the last time that we've been here, we're not showing hidden files and directories. So we're looking for app data, but we just see this shortcut to application data. So let's go up to the parent directory, which is my username. Right click, down at the bottom, show hidden files and directories. And now let's come back. There's our app data. Okay, so this is something you're going to have to do often. Is it frustrating? I find it frustrating, but it's the way life is here in September of 2018. So within app data, we want to open that, and you'll remember we wanted to go to local, and we wanted to go within that to Conda, and within that we want to go to Conda again and envs environments. Let's open up envs. Okay, and Django 2 development, it's right there. Let's open up that. Okay, and what you have to remember is that, again, it's not looking for an environment, it's looking for a Python interpreter. It's going to use the whole environment, but you have to point it to a proper copy of Python. Now, in each environment, down at the bottom, you're going to see a shortcut to the Python that is in here. Where exactly it is in Windows, I forget. In the Mac and Linux, it's under bin, but perhaps it's under lib. But the shortcut is the preferred way to do it. So we're just going to highlight the shortcut for Python exe. Our OK button lights up. Okay, when we were only selecting the directory for the env, well, the OK button, it didn't have enough information yet. So go down and click on the shortcut in the proper env for Python exe and say OK. All right, so good. That's the virtual environment we want. We're going to say OK. Now, are we ready to create yet? No, we're not. Okay. Have I done that before? Yes, too many times. Because we want to make sure that this more settings is properly configured as well. Okay. So the template language, in my class, we're going to be using the Django template language. We'll talk about there being an alternative called Jinja 2, but we're using the Django template language. That's the default, that's fine. The templates folder is called templates. That's a typical convention, so that's good. The application name, we have to tell it to build the first application for us. Okay, so we're really not going to build a real application. We're just going to show that we can run the server for some application. So what am I going to call this application name? I'm just going to call it some app. No, let's call it first app. Okay, first app. Do we want to enable Django admin? Yeah, we do. This is a very powerful capability. So now, having done all these things, before you create, you have to pick a Django project. You have to remember to name it up here on this long path expression. You have to pick the proper virtual environment in that dialog, and now you have to pick these on the more settings for Django. Now you're ready to create. All right. And if you look down at the bottom, you're going to see that PyCharm is actually searching through this list of files and libraries and all that kind of stuff that we have, and it's doing some indexing. Okay, so you can expect this to go on for a little while. Can you try to do some work in the meantime? Yeah, I think you can, but you keep your eye down here. If you're not getting the behavior that you want, you're going to want to make sure that this stuff at the bottom has resolved. Here it's already resolved on mine. Nope, here it goes again. It's doing even more. Okay, so data sources detected. I'm not going to worry about that for right now. Okay, so what do we have? Well, we're going to learn a lot about settings.py and URLs bit.py, but these are two key files that are part of our project. But if we open up first Django project here, this is the top level directory, you're going to see that there is a directory inside of first Django project called first Django project. And it's got files in here including the settings and the URLs for the whole project. And we can also see that we also have a first app. Okay, so this is our first app. Okay, and that has that has a bunch of infrastructure as well. Okay, so we do have a proper Django project, and one of the ways to know on PyCharm if you have a proper Django project is if when you one of the things that you can do with Django projects is you can run the server. Okay, so let's go up to the menu and click on Tools, and there is the way that you run the development server is under a program called manage.py. In fact, if we go over here to the left, you'll see that program here. So that's part of the Django development infrastructure. It provides a lot of services, including the development server. So let's click on Run manage.py task. And it's going to run. And it's running manage.py. And it's running it in our virtual environment. Do we see something that says that it's inside of our virtual environment? No, we don't. But it is inside of our virtual environment. And then the easiest thing to do is to type run server. Okay, and then you have to do enter and then enter again. And it's going to fire up, if we've done anything right, it's going to fire up the development server. And if we click on the link we have here, we're going to go to the default browser, which in this case is Edge. So let's look at that. And it's going to open it up and go, hey, the install worked successfully, congratulations. So this says, and look up here, this is Django 2.1. Pretty good stuff. So what do you do from here? Well, what you do from here is you take the course. All right. Okay. That's it. Now let's point out a couple of other things. Okay. There's a lot of things that we're going to be doing with manage.py. Okay. One of the things that we can do is we can run the development server. What we're actually seeing here is the log, the HTTP log for the development server. So it says that we did a get, and we got back at 200 OK, and it's great. That was the page that we saw. Okay, now how do you stop this development server? Well, Um, Sometimes this is hard to do on um, the Mac version. Okay, I only have so much experience here, but um, uh, what I like to do is just go to the stop button. Let's see if we can make that work. Stop currently running process. Stop. If we were doing this at the command line, it would tell us to do a Control C. Let's try Control C first. Control C, it doesn't really listen to your keyboard right here. So this stop button is going to simulate that, I believe. So let's do that. And yeah, it stopped the development server, and now we're back out into manage.py, which has a number of services we're going to learn. It's a command line tool, okay, but where we are is we're not at the operating system command line. We're at the command line inside of that application called manage.py. Okay, now what other things could you run? What happens if you want to close this altogether? Well, on the size of the screen we have here, we're not seeing all the controls on the left side, but if we go over here to show me more controls, we do see an X. That will close the window. That will terminate the session. If you want to get it back, how do you get it back? Go up to Tools and run the manage.py task. Okay. What if we wanted to use a Python console? Now, why would we want to do this? Well, in the textbook that we're using, Django Unleashed, there's quite a bit of stuff where we're typing in, we're typing in some code, sometimes to demonstrate stuff, sometimes to set up a database environment, that kind of stuff. If we wanted to do that, we would just click on the Python console. And the Python console is, again, it is within our, it knows about our, it knows about our environment. Okay? And in fact, if we were to look all the way over to the right here, we'd see that the first line is probably pointing to, among other things, our environment. Although I can't see how it actually does. Okay, so you could do that there. All right, and to close the Python console, you just do that. The terminal, okay? The terminal, this looks like it might be a great place to do stuff at the command line, and there is a lot of stuff that people do at the command line in testing Django apps. But this has the same problem that the terminal capability had when we were working with the non-Django projects. On Windows, with the preferred install for Anaconda, it doesn't know Anaconda here. So if we say conda env list, it says conda what? Okay, so right now the preferred approach, there are some, again, I mentioned this previously, if you want to do some searching around the web, there is one place where they show you some magic that you can do to hook up this terminal such it will operate within the env for your project. But I'm not going to have you do that because everybody else is saying, well, it turns out you can't do this. And instead of doing this, we're going to shrink this, and we're going to go to the console for Anaconda. So I'm going to come down over top of it here, and it's called Anaconda prompt. So you could go down to the taskbar, open up my Anaconda prompt. Okay. And again, it's currently on the virtual environment base, which is not the one that we want. Okay, because if we say conda list, there's a ton of stuff in this one. Watch. So it knows about conda. And this just goes on and on and on and on. It's got a ton of stuff. It doesn't have, it's not the one that we want. Okay. So what do we want? Well, we want another one. So let's say conda env list. And it's going to list the virtual environments that are available to us. So in addition to base, we've got the one that we want is Django 2 development. So we can say conda activate Django 2 development. And there it is over in the parens. So what happens now? Well, if we say conda list to see what packages are inside of it, do we get what we want? Well, we do. We've got Python 3.6.6 and we got Django 2.1. That's the one that we want. Okay. Now, if in fact we want to work in our Django project at the command line, we have to make that the current directory. So we're going to do that the same way essentially that we did it for the plain old Python project. Let's do a dir to find out what the subdirectories are. The one that we want is PyCharm projects. So cd PyCharm projects. Okay. And let's do a dir. And the one that we're interested in is called first Django project. Let's say cd first Django. Oh, forgot the underscores. First Django project. Okay, and let's do a dir. Okay. And look what's in here. Among the files that are in the top level of that project directory is something called manage.py. Well, that again is a utility program that provides lots of services, including run server. So, and run server is how we run the development server. So how can we start manage.py? Well, all Python programs, we're going to say Python space and then the name of the program, manage.py. So and enter. And it's going to say, oh, the command line version wants you to tell it what you can do. It doesn't want you to just run the project, run manage.py. It wants it to tell you what it wants. And it turns out that one of the things you can do is run server. Okay, so we've got down here run server. So let's, I'm going to use the up arrow to go back to what we said. And then I'm going to say Python manage.py, and then I'm going to put run server. And there it is. So now we've run the server. Now we don't have this convenient little link right here, but I think we could probably, we're going to know that when we're working on the local host IP address is 127.0.0.1. The port that we use for the development server and for the production server, unless we've got more than one, is 8000. So if we go to, let's fire up Edge, and let's say HTTP 127 point, and there it is. We've already been there before. 0.0.1 port 8000, and we go there, and there we are. So if you want to work at the command line on Windows, use the command prompt associated with Anaconda instead of the terminal feature in PyCharm, because it's not wired up the right way by default. And again, if you're feeling really ambitious, go out and search the web and find the configuration they have to do to make that work, because you know, you can do it. I just don't think it's gonna be all that robust over time. And somewhere along here, they're going to figure out how to fix this in Windows, and we're going to be able to use the terminal feature. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to close Edge, and you can see here how do you quit the server? Well, it says to quit the server with control break, which in this operating system is control C. So I'm just going to get down underneath and do a control C. And there we are. So when I did the first control C, I just saw the log of that, the access and the HTTP log. And now when I hit Control C again, I actually stopped the server. Now why it behaved exactly like that is a little bit of a mystery to me, but I think we can make that work. So that's how to work at the command line in Windows. So we're just going to do exit, and now we're going to get back to PyCharm. Okay, so let's say we want to create a second PyCharm project. Okay. So let's just say file close project. Okay. So let's say we want to create a new project. I said PyCharm project, but I meant Django project. So Django. Okay, and remember we've got to put the name up here. Second Django project. Project interpreter, let's look. Plain old Python, no, that's it, but let's do the drop down. Django 2 development's already here, so it's pretty sticky. Okay, so do we have to go up and configure the configuration that we want for every new project? I think not. I think we'll do well just to use the stickiness that we get by default. And then in the more settings, we want the template language is going to be Django. The templates folder is going to be called templates. The application name, and let's just call this second app. Okay, and we create that, and that's all created. And again, if we wanted to prove that we have a properly configured project, let's run the development server. So let's go up to Tools, run the Manage Py task, and we're down in here. And here we're getting a command line for it, and we're going to say run server. And there it is. And when we're running in this little thing, we get a nice sort of HTML link that we're able to click on. So we click on that, and we open up Edge, and we see that, yeah, this is the proper Django project as well. Okay? So, okay, that just about does it. Now, what would you do if you had a project that you had created in the you'd not created here? You created at the command line. Let's say you're doing the Django Girls tutorial, or you were following the textbook for Django Unleashed, and so you put the project someplace you can find it, probably under PyCharm projects. That would be fine. What happens if you open it up and it's not behaving properly? Well, how do you know it's not behaving properly? The thing that's the telltale sign for me is I go to Tools and I can't find Run Manage PyTask. So it doesn't really know what kind of project it is. Well, what I do then is, while I have it open, I go to File and Settings. And I go to Project Interpreter, and I make sure that I have the right environment. Okay. And I can say Add. And I can do all the stuff that I did before. Okay, so if it doesn't have the right environment, I give it the right Conda environment. We know how to do that. And then the other thing is, I go to Project Structure. Okay, and I see that. That looks okay. I think your project structure is going to be fine. And then let's go to Languages and Frameworks. And Django. And this is how we get ourselves, it says this is a Django root. This is the settings file. This looks okay. What we can say is, we want to enable Django support. Maybe that isn't enabled on the project that we're trying to kind of refurbish to be a proper PyCharm Django project. Okay, so it's possible through this configuration you get to from settings to take a Django project that you created at the command line, and make it known to Django and use all the good Django features on it. Okay, when Django creates a PyCharm, when PyCharm creates a Django project, it does it using the command line tools. Okay, we should be getting the same layout of files and file names and all that kind of stuff. It just kind of hides that. So if you have created your project at the command line, then you should just have to hook up the settings, and you should be good to go with PyCharm. Okay? So that's it. That should be enough to get you going with PyCharm and Django. And we're going to have a lot of tutorials and things to do, so I'll be back to see you soon. In the meantime, I'm just going to say bye-bye.